let's address this idea that if the what the fuck were you even saying? The idea that if the information changes, like the DNA information changes, and there's a process that selects for errors, it doesn't get every single error, and the errors are a necessary component of life, because if life does not change in subtle ways, like everybody that denies evolution actually believes in evolution to a certain extent. If life doesn't, it isn't slightly different every generation, then life is far more likely to go extinct because environments change. So, for example, bacteria. You agree that there are antibiotic-resistant bacteria alive today?
Yes.
Okay, they evolved, and the only way for that to be possible was because every single bacteria is slightly different, and the ones that have unpredictable, random differences in their genome that ended up being better able to survive the antibacterial drugs or whatever environment are the ones more likely to reproduce and survive. Classic natural selection. So this error thing is literally not a problem, and it's actually a necessary component that makes life able to thrive.
Okay, but there's a different there's a different theory that explains that. So, like the Lamarckian theory, where these differences occur
Lamarckism is
because of environmental factors, and we know now that environmental factors can change the RNA, which it changes the DNA expression, and so they cross generation. They go into the germline. So before we had this idea that you only had changes through DNA changes, but now we know for certainty with epigenetics.
Epigenetics does change the genetics. It changes.
It changes the DNA. It changes the RNA.
It changes the DNA molecule. Because it either methylates or I always forget what the other word is, and people tell me it, and I still always forget. It changes the way in which the DNA is expressed. Yeah. What Lamarck thought was that the environment imprints on the individual, and that characteristics that an individual acquired during its lifetime can be passed down. Lamarck in no way whatsoever predicted that a hereditary molecule like the giraffe's long neck, he didn't predict that the giraffe's long neck would ooze its essence into the balls of the giraffe or anything like that. So the theory actually doesn't account for this in any way. But Lamarckism has been demonstrated to be false. I can't remember who it was. It was a German. It wasn't von Baer. I don't think so anyways, but it was a German scientist, and he took mice, and he chopped off their tails in every single generation, and then he would breed the tailless mice together, and whenever they would have babies, he'd chop off their tails, and then he would breed them together, and after multiple generations, there was absolutely no difference in the tails. The genes have the instructions within them for guiding the development of the organism, and lopping off a part of its body doesn't do anything with respect to affecting the gene line. Now, it is true that the environment can methylate the DNA and change the way it's expressed later in life, but that's not...
But that accounts for things like... for example, if you take a horse and you take it out of the soft pasture and you take it into hard pasture, so that it undergoes a form of stress in its bone density, then that's passed down. So this is when you get this difference in bone density of different horses, or in the expression of the beaks. So like if they change their diet and they ate different things, their beak structure would change, and this points to the idea
only way their
that,
beak structure is going to change is if there are changes in genes or gene expression.
Gene expression,
Yeah,
from environmental factors, which is like they've eaten different things. So
Sure,
and
but
then
we also know that changes in genes lead to morphological changes in organisms. That's been seen many times.
yeah, there is a small amount, but it doesn't account for. I think the evidence that it accounts for the diversity we have is kind of far fetched, and the maths just
No.
doesn't play it out.
What if, okay, let's say 500 million years from today, do you think that there will be no new organisms on the planet?
No, I don't. I don't think there will be more different organisms. I think
Why not?
they will be changed and adapted, but I don't think the extent because in this Lamarckian or the neo Lamarckian worldview, these changes can only occur if the RNA has the capacity or is an inbuilt design to adapt to different situations. So it's still limited. So you
To
can
what?
so if you have a bird, it can still only ever be a bird, but with slight variations.
But there's no limit to those slight. When an organism, let's say we look at 1,000 years worth of slight variations. In the next 1,000 years, different variations are going to accumulate, right?
Yeah,
And then in the next 1,000
they
years,
will.
even more even more different variations are going to accumulate. And that process is able to make species turn into completely different forms, like how theropod dinosaurs evolved into today's modern birds. They're still technically dinosaurs, cladistically, but they're not theropod dinosaurs really anymore.
I hear you. I hear you. But I
Language
think
does this kind of thing. 5,000 years ago, nobody spoke English. And if you want to say,
but it's
look,
all,
the odds of somebody who doesn't speak English, or the odds of even a bunch of people who don't speak English, just one day, randomly, for no reason, spontaneously developing 400,000 new words that are of a new language is impossible. You're right, it is impossible. But what if every single generation, a microscopic amount of new accumulated differences in the language are there, and some artifacts of the language disappear? There are plenty of things we don't say anymore in addition to the accumulated things. That process leads to non-English speakers eventually giving rise to people that speak English, right? And with the small genetic changes, there's nothing to say that it can't produce organisms that are radically different, especially when all of the differences that they have continue accumulating.
so here's an interesting thought for you. So we have this diversity of languages, yeah. So we have Chinese and we have like tribal languages in whatever region. We have English and we have Spanish and etc. But the common thing about all these languages is that we can translate between them because underlying this language is a design. It's a process of how we conceptualize things, whether the way we see time as a linear process, how we categorize things, etc. And this is why we're able to translate Chinese into English and German into French, because it's within those design bounds. If you was to
You know,
randomly or evolve the language so that it didn't abide by those laws or within those confines, it would disappear because it wouldn't have any meaning.
yes, so evolution is
So
not a
this,
random process, and natural selection guarantees that only beneficial mutations are ones that accumulate. So this isn't like this isn't a gotcha, really in any way.